Is the American dream dead? No, it's abandoned. Equal opportunity for success is not something we've ever really evinced as genuinely wanting in the United States. I'll talk about why I think it's abandoned and how that's different from being dead and why we abandoned it. So, death versus abandonment in the American dream. You could point to lots of things to look at the relative mobility of Americans and what type of economic status they achieve through their lifetimes, but you really needn't go through the trouble. You can just look at 5-year-olds on the day that they start kindergarten. Because even these kids who probably can't tie their shoes, probably can't read, probably still believe in Santa Claus, even these kids have been imprinted with the gaping inequality between rich and poor in the US in a way that will probably last their whole lives. On the one hand, we can measure this through the readiness gap, which is the kind of emotional literacy, numeracy, and social skills that are needed to succeed in kindergarten. You are simply much less likely to have those in sufficient quantities if you are from a poor or lower income family, while you are much more likely to have them if you are from a rich family. Rich kids are ready to start kindergarten, and poor kids often aren't. You can also see it through their basic health, both evidence of malnutrition and childhood obesity. Again, these are very much a function of parents' income. Could your parents afford nutritious food, and did they have the time to prepare it for you so that you met your adequate nutrition needs without falling into obesity? Very much a poor versus rich children thing. The reason why I say the American dream has been abandoned is because not only do we know about these massive gaps in 5-year-olds as they start kindergarten, we also know that it extends both directions. We know where it comes from. It comes from the type of early childhood education and nutrition that their parents were able to afford, and we know the effect that it has. Not being ready for kindergarten and already presenting with a severe health risk when you're 5 years old follows you throughout your life because both education and health tend to be path dependent, meaning that they're predicted by the period that came before. And that's not to say these kids are fated, that they have no choice or no chance. It's that we already know that kids, even by age 5, who come from poor families, have so much more to overcome. This idea that we should pull ourselves up by our bootstraps is a lot to put on someone who believes in Santa Claus. It's a lot to put on someone who doesn't know how to read. That now the weight of America's economic inequality is on them to overcome, and they're 5. This is why I think the American dream has been abandoned, because not only do we know all this, we also know what would help address it, and we don't do it. We need 5 years of early childhood education to be affordable and accessible for all American children whose parents choose to get it for them, and not just the wealthiest parents who can command enough market power to secure it. That means we need to have federally provided and funded early childhood education through childcare from ages 0 to 3 and 2 years of preschool at ages 3 and 4 so that all kids have a chance to be more healthy and more prepared when they start kindergarten. This is a massive federal policy that almost all of our peer countries make, and we do not. We are a laggard in this respect, and we are losing out on a better American society and economy by choosing not to invest in these children. That is an abandoned dream, because if you want everyone to have an equal chance of success, you have to want it for 5-year-olds. And if you don't want it for 5-year-olds, you just don't want it. If you don't want 5-year-olds to have equal opportunity for success, it's not something that you actually want for your country. This is why I say the dream has been abandoned. Now, why did we abandon it? Well, in the case of 5-year-olds, I think you also don't need to go into adults. 5-year-olds tell you everything you need to know about why we don't want the American dream in the US. If you say we need 5 years of early childhood education that has adequate nutrition standards for all kids, you're going to hear 2 objections that aren't really genuine and not hear the objection that is. First thing you'll hear is that it's too expensive. Early childhood education on a 0 to 5 program would cost somewhere between $400 to $500 billion over a 10-year period. That's what the current estimates put it at. In 2017, the United States passed the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. Over that same 10-year period, it cost over $2 trillion, which means that the federal government gave away in 2017 enough money to fund comprehensive early childhood education 4 times over. The economy didn't collapse on itself. It was fine. We were able to spend all this money. We just spent it on something that in no way helped poor children and in no way gave them opportunity. So we can afford things when we're giving tax cuts to rich companies and corporations and families, but we can't afford things when it's about giving children education. That's why I don't think that cost argument is, genuine. The second thing you'll hear is that, well, the government can't interfere in early childhood because that's the parents' responsibility and that's the parents' realm. Sometimes this argument can get kind of ugly, like, why should I pay for someone else's kids? Or you shouldn't have kids if you can't afford it. Or it gets like really preachy, like, what kids needs most is a parent at home. I don't think these people are trying to be not genuine when they say them. It just, this is one of those things where, like, maybe the thing that you say and the thing that you want are actually in conflict, but you can't see it. 2/3 of mothers with children under 6 are working, meaning that they need some form of childcare, and they'll either be able to buy high quality or they'll have to find low quality in the interim. So it's kind of hard to say Americans don't want childcare when the majority of them need childcare. You also hear in surveys pretty routinely that most Americans think the government should do more on the early childcare front because it's so expensive. And whenever there's been expanding opportunities for childcare, people are lining up to take it. But the other problem with this argument is it rests very much on a false dichotomy of, like, you have government over here and you have family over here. And if this one gets bigger, this one has to get smaller. So we can't make the government any bigger in children's lives because we lose families. That's wrong. That's not how early childhood is characterized at all. What you actually have is the private market over here, large and in charge and unaffordable and inaccessible, and it is bleeding families dry of how much it costs to provide childcare. And you have families over here that are in fact getting smaller, both in their income and their ability, by how expensive this market is. When we're saying that the government needs to interfere and intervene in early childhood, they're not intervening in the family, they're intervening in the market. Because when it comes to the market, families are outmatched and outgunned, and they need help. So maybe you think children should stay at home with their parents, but you probably don't think that a private sector market should dictate the quality of children. And that is what is happening. So the thing we don't say, the actual argument against having something like comprehensive early childhood education that could truly give more kids in the US a chance to success, what we don't say, Joe Manchin actually said for us when debating the Build Back Better Act. In response to paid family leave, he said, well, some parents would just use that time to go hunting. And in response to the expansion of the child tax credit to reduce child poverty, he said, some of those parents will use that money to go buy drugs. And I appreciate that Manchin was quoted as saying these things, although he didn't say them on record, because this is the actual objection to helping children, that we don't like their parents. And I don't mean we as in like the proverbial me. I mean, like, probably you don't like their parents. America doesn't like poor people. We don't like the way they dress. We don't like the way they act. We don't like the clothes that they wear. We don't like how they, comport themselves in public. We like to make videos on TikTok making fun of people at Walmart. We don't like poor people, and we don't want to help them. And we don't want to help their children. And that is why the American dream has been abandoned, because you have to find, just a random poor person on the street and ask yourself, what am I willing to do to help their kid? And until the answer is everything necessary, you also don't believe in the American dream. Part of me wishes that there was just a politician out there that would kind of like tell Americans, like, you work hard, you pay taxes, you're better than all those bad parents who don't work, who do drugs, who don't dress well, but you're not better than their children. So the American dream is abandoned. It is up on a shelf, and it is there for us to grab when we are willing to risk helping parents we don't like, parents who we'd rather judge than assist, because we know that we can't have an American dream until their kids have the same chance that our kids do. And right now, they don't, because we're not going to help people we don't like.